Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with Bretonnia, yes indeed, Fey Enchantress here, and the Chivalrous Knights with plenty of peasants taking on the High Elves. So let's get to the build here. Of course, Fey Enchantress leading the way. She's got Earthblood and Regrowth, which has been changed. Now gives Vigor instead of physical resistance. So, yeah, still very useful. Vigor, particularly in the late game, 100% Vigor, especially bringing them back up to fresh when they're fighting units that are exhausted, can make a huge difference. The physical resistance obviously isn't going to be as good during the interim of the fight, but certainly could be better in the late game. That being said, though, with GRAIL Knights, I have two of them. They, of course, three of them. They, of course, have perfect Vigor, so you don't necessarily want to be casting Regrowth on them as much as you would before. The Companions of Cornell, however, do not have perfect Vigor, so they're going to be an excellent target for that. You know, you can use it to self-heal the Fey Enchantress if you get caught out, although you've definitely made a mistake at that point. But yeah, we've got the three GRAIL Knights, whole mess of men-at-arms. The Swordsmen don't have shields. The Spearmen do have shields, and they have some extra chevrons just to give them nice melee defense so that hopefully they'll hold. We also have 4 peasant archers. For the High Elves, we've got some spearmen, a couple of white lions, phoenix guard, we've got Lothern sea guard, a couple of archers. Hidden in the woods over here, a noble on horseback leading the fireborn, shadow mage here. She's got Melkos, Mystifying Miasma, and Penumbral Pendulum. Tyrion on foot this time. Very interesting. He's got Foe Seeker, Standing Ground, and Feint and Riposte. So without further ado, let's get the battle underway. You can see the peasants are going to be rolling up. I honestly don't mind unloading into the High Elf Spearmen, despite the fact that they are, they have pretty good missile block chance, 55%. They're relatively lightly armored. Granted, they're not that expensive, but still, they have that anti-large bonus, high melee defense, good leadership. Just in general, if we can do damage at a distance, try and work on that martial prowess a bit, can definitely help. I did not see those Fireborn and the Noble in the woods, so I'm going to go ahead and pull back with my GRAIL Knights here. That being said, a very timely Melkos Mystifying Miasma for my opponent does mean that these Fireborn are going to be able to catch up some of those unit models there. Thankfully, I've got some supporting peasants on station to be able to screen out the Fireborn here. You can see them getting in here with their swords and spears and shields and everything, and then we're going to go ahead and countercharge with the GRAIL Knights as the Fireborn try and now pull away. And this is going to enable us to get a now favorable engagement there. Meanwhile, on the front line, Spearmen fighting Spearmen. Spearmen at arms, I should say, fighting High Elf Spearmen. My GRAIL Knights, I was trying to push up and around the flank. My opponent does manage to catch me just barely there with the Phoenix Guard. A little bit out of position on my part, but very well played to my opponent there. You can see a mutual trade there. That Spearman that was getting wrecked by the Peasant Bowman did a great job. Now we're going to move the Peasant Bowman up, though, and start to trade with the Archers. Since I have a much higher volume of fire, we can definitely out-trade here. Granted, we have lost 1 unit, but still, Reserve GRAIL Knights, not even been activated yet, still just chilling in the back. Meanwhile, these Fireborn trying to pull up and around, but thankfully, because the GRAIL Knights are supported by peasants here, the GRAIL Knights are able to, keep up relatively so with the Fireborn and at least pin in their unit models there, and then the peasants can kind of come in and help clean them up a little bit there. So definitely a favorable engagement for Bretonnia. Meanwhile, Knights of the Companions of Cornell here got a nice charge into those White Lions, now rear charging the Fireborn again over here. So yeah, just trying to focus down this high value anti-large target there. And meanwhile, the Phoenix Guard just avoiding them at all costs, more or less. Had landed home a few nice rear charges on some archers there, and we're going to try and call down the Chalice of Potions on this pocket. Meanwhile, my opponent dropping a Penumbral Pendulum there. Doesn't do the most damage in the world, but still, definitely trying to come back in this a little bit. Personally, in more cavalry-heavy matchups, I tend to favor Pit of Shades over Penumbral Pendulum, just because it can sometimes pin in heavy cavalry or do a ton of damage to a big cav death blob, like this one right here, once they're charged in. But yeah, you can see the Fey Enchantress perfectly healthy still, so we're in pretty good position, all things considered. The Shadow Mage does look like she has Pit of Shades, actually. Going to call that up right here. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of those cavalry models got stuck in, but you can see the cavalry models that did get caught in that area of effect are more or less stuck there. I'm going to go ahead and ride a few more through on accident, which is not the best, but didn't actually end up doing that much damage. I'm not sure if that was an overcast or not. Did a ton of damage to those Peasant Bowmen, but probably not super cost effective at the end of the day. Probably would have been better to wait just a little bit and cast it now, like right here on this blob. That would have been very, very devastating. Would have caught a lot of those cavalry unit models and done a lot more damage, but still, pretty decent play there. You can see the Phoenix Guard, we're focusing with the peasants. Obviously, they're not going to take a whole lot of damage from that peasant bow fire, but, you know, any damage that we can do at a distance is going to be decent, because I don't have a whole lot of tools for dealing with elite halberds, other than just a massive cavalry alpha strike, which you definitely can work, but thank you, GE Force, please get out of here. Meanwhile, dropping an Earthblood on this cav blob here, didn't quite get the companions, but still mostly healthy there, not too much to worry about at this point, trying to finish off this Shadow Mage here, while the peasants continue to hold the line. And this is the issue with bringing the elite infantry for the High Elves, is that Bretonnia can just outmaneuver you with their superior mobility, and eventually, you know, once they isolate the anti-large armor piercing Phoenix Guard, they can just hit them from multiple directions, and as long as they haven't taken too much damage throughout the course of the battle, you can just continue to roll around. And you know, this big cav death blob isn't super efficient, if I'm being honest. It would be better to spread out and hit from multiple directions, but in this kind of late game situation where we're far enough ahead, we're just going to roll around in this big kind of death blob here to soak up some of the views of the Companions of Quennel riding with the Grail Knights here. Awesome stuff. Companions of Quennel have to be one of the best regiments renowned in the game as well. Just excellent combat stats overall, physical resistance, armor piercing. Yeah, a lot to like about these guys. 80 armor, immune to psychology. Very, very good unit overall. And yeah, over here we've got some regrouped Grail Knights fighting with the Noble. Unfortunately, there are some Phoenix Guard in here, but some peasants also supporting. We're going to go ahead and drop another Chalice of Potions here, essentially a bound Comet of Cassandora, coming from the heavens there to rain down on the both High Elves and peasants alike. Probably got more peasants than High Elves there, but it is going to be enough to do some damage to the Phoenix Guard, get him a little bit closer to routing there. The Noble finishes off a few of the Grail Knights, and the 4 that remain are going to go ahead and scatter. But we still have 2 more units of Grail Knights plus the Companions of Quennel. I believe we have used the... oh, they're very tired. Not quite yet. I believe I drop a regrowth on these guys at some point to bring their vigor back up, but might have missed that at some point. Meanwhile, the Phoenix Guard continuing to fight here, but again, just the outmaneuvering and the out-modeling, I would say. Just having more unit models on the field, that's really the way to beat the High Elves. In general, you want to try to get more unit models than them on the field and just outbody them with a few elite kind of sweeper type units, but they don't tend to trade super efficiently with most chaff, which is why I went with a very, very wide peasant front line, and then obviously pretty heavy on the heavy cavalry. I mean, it's Bretonnia, how can you not? But Grail Knights in general, their magic damage, very good, trade super efficiently with Dragon Princes, wreck Phoenix Guard, you know, if they get a good rear charge. Phoenix Guard in this particular battle were able to rack up a lot of kills against peasants, but at the end of the day just didn't get it done against the elite heavy cavalry targets that they really needed to go up against. 83 kills on men-at-arms. I'm not really sure what exactly happened there, if some High Elves, you know, accidentally fell over or something and the men-at-arms just happened upon them, or maybe a unit of spearmen just fell asleep. And the men-at-arms just went in, you know, while they were, I don't know. Somehow these guys got 83 kills, which is mighty impressive, and also they didn't get a chevron as well, which I find a bit odd, but these Spearmen-at-Arms all had their chevrons before the battle, but you can see chevrons aplomb for the Grail Knights here. 62 kills, 65, 69, 87 for the Companions of Quennel, definitely carrying a heavy load there, doing a ton of damage to the White Lions, the Phoenix Guard. Fireborn only ended up getting 5 kills, and although they were supported by the Noble, you know, since I have more unit models, I have the ability to support with some peasants, and they'll soak hits. You know, the peasants with spears will do a tiny bit of damage. The peasants with swords really won't do any damage at all to Dragon Princes, but they'll soak hits at the very least, kind of trap in unit models, and yeah, just overall, that out-modeling of the High Elves allows you to support engagements like that, whereas the Fireborn would probably be a unit of Grail Knights one-on-one, but with the support of those peasants, you know, that fight changes. So, for my opponent's build, I mean, Lore of Shadow is pretty nice on paper, but with the High Elves, because they lack unit models, I find it's much more efficient to go with a Lore of Magic that has healing. Against Bretonnia, I would definitely recommend Lore of High Magic, just because flying units are a risk in this matchup. And anyone facing Bretonnia is at risk of flying units. Pegasus Knights are better than they were before. I don't know if they're still super usable, but Royal Hippogriff Knights certainly are pretty scary right now. And, you know, you have Lewin, you have Albric, who's actually not terrible, not absolutely awful, but, yeah. So, in general, then, as the High Elves, you're going to want to take that into consideration. Thankfully, Lore of High Magic provides you really everything you need in that air control spell that we all know and either love or hate with Tempest. You've also got the Apotheosis for a nice, cheap, efficient heal. Only hits one target, but as the High Elves, you tend to have pretty low model count units anyway, and especially like the Fireborn or other elite targets like that, very useful to dump that Apotheosis in, especially because you get that Shield of Safri, only for 9 seconds, but still, the 11% damage resistance is a pretty nice bit of mitigation for a army that has a low model count. So, overall, would definitely recommend the High Mage, Fiery Convocation. I don't know that I would take that. Arcane and Forging is a nice insurance in case your opponent doesn't bring any flyers at all. You have a little bit of extra utility. You can throw this on like the Fey Enchantress, for example. Give a plus 45 ability recharge and do quite a bit of damage to her. Although I guess she has magic resistance on the whatever it is, the unicorn, that's it. So I guess it might not be as efficient to use against her, but you still can give that ability recharge, so, you know, there's a bit of give and take there. Or, you know, if they have a caster or other, you know, single entity, you can use it on them. So, yeah, fun battle. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.